Indiana is a state known for its remarkable beauty. Lush forests, rolling farmlands, serene lakes, and charming historic Midwestern towns create the picturesque landscape that we call home. From the vibrant blooms of spring to the golden hues of autumn, Indiana offers a sensory feast throughout the year. But Indiana's environment is not without its challenges. The state is no stranger to the full spectrum of extreme weather events.
Severe thunderstorms, tornadoes, and blizzards commonly sweep across our states, while floods and windstorms test the resilience of our communities. Earthquakes, though rare, are a reminder that the state lies within a region of historic level seismic activity.
That said, despite the unpredictability of nature, Hoosiers have shown a remarkable ability to adapt and recover since before the state's ratification in 1816, making Indiana not only incredibly beautiful, but admirably resilient when it comes to bravely facing whatever weather comes our way.
It's with that spirit in mind that Indiana Storm Chasers offers the public the strongest, most comprehensive, and up-to-date weather forecasts and severe weather notifications in the Great Lakes and Ohio River Valley regions.
More than just another group of weather junkies, Indiana Storm Chasers was built with the following mission statement in mind: to protect, preserve, and enrich the lives of the citizens of and visitors to the Hoosier State by committing to a higher standard of excellence in weather forecasting and real-time field reporting, while providing community education on topics such as identifying hazards and severe weather preparedness.
As NOAA Weather Ready Nation ambassadors, we take the education part extremely seriously and hold ourselves to a higher standard than your typical social media storm hype jockeys.
You all are welcome to join us as we continue to be the #1 extreme weather team in Indiana by following us on Facebook, YouTube, and at special events all around the Hoosier State.
Tonight, we're going to talk about a few topics, including historic Indiana weather events, including tornado outbreaks, floods, blizzards, and some unique phenomena that make Indiana the state of surprises, meteorologically speaking.
We're also going to touch base on why we here at Indiana Storm Chasers do what we do, and why storm spotters and chasers are such a valuable asset to the weather world.
Before we begin, it is important to note that the Fujita scale wasn't created and implemented until 1971, and then updated in 1973 before turning over to the enhanced Fujita scale, which became operational on February 1st of 2007. All thanks to the tireless efforts by the legendary Dr. Ted Fujita.
With that cleared up, we're going to flash back when a veritable monster of a tornado tore through part of southwestern Indiana's countryside. Described in local newspapers as a mighty sickle of death and destruction, this storm has been suggested to be the first recorded F5 to hit Indiana, based on newspaper accounts of the damage and destruction. However, there is an obvious lack of scientific data given the era. Regardless, it was devastating to human life, livestock, and infrastructure in Vermilion, Montgomery, and Boone counties. While only 4 lives were reportedly lost in this event, it's wild to think that 2 of the 4 were the result of a train derailment caused when the tornado destroyed a railway bridge spanning the Wabash River. The locomotive and 3 of its cars went off into the river where the engine capsized in the water, killing both the engineer and the fireman in the wreck.
That torch was then passed to the April 1st, 1884 Oakville tornado, which is considered to be one of the most intense tornadoes observed at the time. Despite the date, this storm was no joke, as reports indicate that parts of Oakville vanished as a result of the tornado's devastation, and 8 lives were lost to the wrath of the storm.
Believe it or not, Indiana experienced not one but two Palm Sunday tornado outbreaks. That's right, folks. March 28th, 1920 was the first Palm Sunday outbreak, producing 37 tornadoes, 31 of which were significant, including 4 in northern Indiana ranging from F3 to F5. Though some experts argue whether the storm that ripped through Jay and Delaware counties was an F4 or an F5. Either way, the storm leveled farms and left 17 people dead in its aftermath.
Nearly 5 years later, March 18th of 1925 is a date that will forever go down in infamy as the date of the infamous tri-state tornado. This monster started as an F2 in Missouri and then ripped through Indiana, delivering F4 and F5 damage. After crossing the Wabash River near Griffin, Indiana, and demolishing the entire city in its wake, it rolled across the countryside for the last 40 miles of its 219-mile reign of destruction. The tornado eventually dissipated approximately 3 miles southwest of the town of Petersburg, Indiana, claiming the lives of 71 people in Indiana alone, and leveling the towns of Griffin, Owensville, and Princeton, and around 85 farmsteads in between.
April 11th, 1965 would be the second of the 2 Palm Sunday outbreaks, and the one that would steal the proverbial spotlight, as it produced an estimated 47 tornadoes, including 3 F5s in Indiana alone. Actually, Indiana would claim all 3 of the system's violent F5s, though we're not entirely sure if that's a flex. The first spawned F5 of the day was the second violent tornado to roll through the town of Dunlap in under 90 seconds and left 36 people dead. Lebanon and Sheridan would see the second F5 of the day. The storm killed 28 people, leveled numerous farms and homes, and reportedly threw a vehicle 100 yards. Last but certainly not least, the system's third and final F5 left the entire town of Pittsfield as a relic of the past, with only a concrete war monument daring to defy the monster storm. Homes were also swept cleanly away in the town of Strongsville.
We feel it is important to note that 2 very respectable F4s rolled through northern Clinton County, not terribly far from where we're standing. 9 years later, it would be Crawford, Perry, Harrison, Washington, Clark, and Scott County's turn to feel the wrath of F5 level power. The April 3rd storm was part of the infamous 1974 super outbreak. This system holds the record for the highest number of F5 tornadoes in a single outbreak, and the second highest number of tornadoes in a single day, behind only the super outbreak of 2011. 20 tornadoes ripped across the state of Indiana alone, including the F5 terror that stayed on the ground for 62 miles across southern Indiana. A woman who chose to shelter in her mobile home was marked as the tornado's first victim mere moments after its initial touchdown near Huffman in far western Perry County. While it would claim 6 lives, its legacy of devastation will be long remembered, having wiped the towns of Martinsburg and Daisy Hill nearly completely off the map during its violent life before it finally dissipated in Scott County.
And while several other significant tornado outbreaks have occurred between 1974 and today, we'd be here all night if we paid homage to them all.
Especially when Indiana has seen more than just tornadoes when it comes to extreme weather and environmental phenomena.
Just 4 short years after the super outbreak of 1974, the January of 1978 should bring a shiver down your spine, and for good reason. At 3:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, January 25th, 1978, the National Weather Service issued the first ever blizzard warning for the entire state of Indiana. It replaced a heavy snow warning that had been issued some 12 hours previously. While snowfall rates of half an inch to an inch per hour were not especially remarkable, even by today's standards, it would be the duration of the heavy snow that sealed the fate of the storm, which would later come to be known as the infamous Great Blizzard of '78.
For 32 hours, the blizzard lashed out in fury at the entire state of Indiana and most of the Midwestern United States, after enduring over 20 inches of snowfall and peak winds near 50 miles an hour. The state was effectively paralyzed. The storm's high winds were more than enough to blow snowdrifts up to over 25 feet high in many locations, and when the storm finally abated, cars were buried and people were trapped inside homes, completely engulfed in snowdrifts, forced to dig their way out. While the actual air temperature failed to dip below zero, the wind chill was a brutal 51 degrees below zero, making attempts to restore infrastructure both imperative and incredibly dangerous. The barograph at the National Weather Service office, located at the Greater Cincinnati Airport, had to be readjusted as the unprecedented drop in pressure caused the pen to fall off of the initial chart scale.
And then there were the great floods of 1990 and 1991. Thanks to lowland flooding from heavy rains earlier in December, many rivers were already out of their banks when a few winter weather systems had left 48 inches of snow cover across the state. A Christmas-time deep freeze kept things mostly at bay, but it was very rapidly undone by unseasonably high temperatures, and a quick 2 to 3 inches of rainfall melted the snowpack and inundated the partially frozen ground. Needless to say, it was a recipe for disaster, creating flooding in some areas that had not seen water of that magnitude in over 30 years. Across Indiana, over some 1,700 structures were damaged, more than 500 of those sustaining major structural damage. 3 people lost their lives, and 72 of 92 Indiana counties were declared a disaster area. What made things worse was another taste of a winter freeze over the new year and into the first week of 1991, turning the floodwaters into a great big giant skating pond, with roads covered in several inch thick sheets of ice in some areas.
Speaking of wind, Indiana is no stranger to windstorms of all sorts of varieties, not just blizzards, which, for what it's worth, has everything to do with wind speed and not so much the snow totals. Think of it as the winter equivalent of a severe thunderstorm, but with slightly different parameters. But I digress. Indiana plays host to everything from microbursts to the dreaded D word, derechos. In fact, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, derechos are a long-lasting mesoscale convective system or line of storms that cause significant wind damage over a large swath of land. In fact, in order for a system to be considered a derecho, the system must sustain damaging winds of 55 miles per hour or greater for 240 miles or more.
These systems cause significant widespread damage to buildings, infrastructure, and crops, especially power lines, rooftops, and maturing corn, generating up to $11 billion in damages in any given year. In fact, the August 10, 2020 derecho was the third most expensive U.S. weather disaster on record, after it cost $11.2 billion in damages. Even more recently, the derecho that hit Indiana in July of 2024 came with a damage cost estimated at $2.4 billion.
But, as we mentioned before, Indiana isn't a one-hit wonder when it comes to anything weather-related, especially wind events. Microbursts are another hazard that Indiana is no stranger to. Unlike derechos, a microburst is a short, powerful storm that can cause significant damage to property and trees. They too can destroy entire fields of crops, down trees, and destroy infrastructure in a very short period of time. On June 25, 2024, the city of Bloomington, Indiana suffered a severe microburst with 80 to 100 mile per hour wind gusts that destroyed almost everything that they touched. Trees were uprooted, barns collapsed, and power was out for over 60,000 people for a good chunk of time due to tree and power line damage. The city allocated $500,000 for cleanup and restoration of city infrastructure alone.
And then there's the fact that even though we're way up by the Great Lakes, our state is not immune to the impacts of tropical weather. While Hurricanes Beryl and Helene brought devastation across Florida and parts of Appalachia, portions of Indiana saw wind damage, flooding, and tornadoes as a result of their remnants encroaching into our area. The remnants of Beryl produced at least 4 tornadoes in the Crossroads state, including the 140-mile-per-hour EF3 in Mount Vernon, Indiana, while the remnants of Hurricane Helene caused widespread flooding and wind damage in addition to several tornadoes, including the 105-mile-per-hour EF1 Lejeune tornado.
One thing we can all agree on is that living near Lake Michigan certainly has its advantages. We get to enjoy things like beautiful lighthouses, wonderful beaches, stunning panoramic vistas, excellent fishing, and so much more that one wouldn't normally associate with life in the Midwest. But did you know that Lake Michigan's temperature fluctuations impose great impacts on Hoosier weather? To put it lightly, if you've ever experienced winter here in Indiana, you've experienced how the marine layer of air influences our weather downwind from Lake Michigan in a big way.
You've definitely experienced it. In fact, I'd wager my lunch money that you have.
Lake effect snow.
But did you know, when freezing temperatures aren't part of the equation, that this same phenomenon is also responsible for the vast majority of waterspouts over Lake Michigan? How about that warm lake water can fuel thunderstorms the same way warm ocean water fuels hurricanes? Now you do.
However, what giveth can also taketh away. How many times have we all watched radar to see storms blow up as they come over the lake, feeding on warm, rich moisture, only to hit the other side and completely fall apart? You can thank the Lake Breeze Convergence Zone for that as well. Depending on the prevailing winds on the other side of the lake, we can either see continued rapid development thanks to the warm, moist environment over the lake, or rapid degeneration of storm systems as they hit a proverbial atmospheric wall.
There's a lot more that goes into it, but for the sake of not coming across like Sheldon Cooper, we'll keep it to the basics and admire how awesome Lake Michigan is and how lucky we are to experience everything it has to offer.
Now let's cut to the chase and get down to brass tacks. We all know what you really want to hear about from us.
And it isn't a science or history lesson. Storm chasing.
Between the two of us, Tia and I have a combined 39 years of chasing experience, and we only make up a small fraction of the team at Indiana Storm Chasers. While storm chasing is fueled by adrenaline
and a whole lot of gas station snacks,
we here at ISC do what we do for 2 reasons. 1, to learn more about these storms by getting up close and personal while recording data that can't be obtained any other way. And 2, to coordinate with local law enforcement, legacy media, and the public directly to help keep Hoosiers ahead of the storm with up-to-date, accurate storm tracks, damage reports, and aid and search and rescue efforts.
We understand that there's a lot of mysticism and stigma developed around the term storm chaser. Most of the time, the term immediately conjures up images similar to what was seen in Twister and Twisters, a group of wild hooligans driving souped-up vehicles across people's bean fields and through their corn with reckless abandon in pursuit of a chance to either shoot something up into or drop something in front of a monster tornado.
And we'll digress. There are some people and groups out there that engage in chasing specifically in search of the almighty YouTube subscriber or Facebook like, and often hype it up with loud hooting and hollering about things like definitive features while pointing at less than suspicious looking rain curtains. But that's not how we and most chasers who are in it for research and public service operate.
It's actually behavior like that and an overabundance of adrenaline junkies equipped with a cell phone that threaten the future of storm chasing. And while the aforementioned social media starlets and adrenaline junkies are the bane of many a forecaster's existence, it's the scientific community and the public who will sustain great losses if storm chasing were to become a thing of the past.
You see, storm chasing for science has been integral to developing the modern understanding of how tornadoes form and how they behave. It's the only way that we, as a society, are able to confirm and actively track tornadoes and damaging storms with accuracy and certainty.
One of the first things they teach you when you step into a Skywarn class is that in many cases radar, while powerful, doesn't always show the complete picture of what is happening within a storm. And the best forecasting models don't always get a system's track or severity right. And that is why trained storm spotters and people willing to educate the public on preparedness measures are such an integral piece of the puzzle when it comes to security on a community, national, and global scale.
2023 ranked 8th for the most disaster-related fatalities in the contiguous U.S. since 1980, with severe weather causing at least 492 direct fatalities and a truly unprecedented number of billion-dollar disasters. 28 in total were recorded, with a total cost of $93.1 billion in damages, making this year historic for the worst reasons possible. Last year, 2024, certainly shattered its place in the record books, coming in hot with an unprecedented $182.7 billion in damages in the United States, the fourth costliest year on record by way of damage. But with over 568 deaths, the toll on human life was more than just egregious. It sent a powerful message.
We must become a weather-ready nation if we are to truly thrive. But building a weather-ready nation requires more than just government weather entities issuing warnings. It requires civilian scientists and the weather community at large to provide up-to-the-minute field-based information to keep the public ahead of any severe storm that may threaten. Most importantly, it requires that all segments of society become empowered with tools, preparedness plans, and post-event relief so that our communities can become more ready, responsive, and resilient as it pertains to the threat of severe and extreme weather.
Storm chasing isn't glamorous, but it, along with the educational seminars and classes we and the National Weather Service teach, is an integral part of saving lives, especially where we live here in the American Midwest. As fun as storm chasing may be, documenting and studying how storms think only benefits us when we sit back and consider things such as the innovation of new building materials and architecture designed to combat things like hail, extreme wind, fire, flooding, extreme snow and cold, and the violence of a tornado or hurricane.
Or how to better implement technology to track these storms in real time. In all reality, we would love to see us retired as relics of a turbulent past, but the truth is that meteorology and the technology used within it is still very much in its infancy, and we are still very much needed out on the front lines of science, education, and public safety.
Which brings us right back to where we started, our vision and mission statement.
To protect, preserve, and enrich the lives of the citizens of and the visitors to the Hoosier State.
By committing to a higher standard of excellence in weather forecasting and real-time field reporting.
While providing community education on topics such as identifying hazards
and severe weather preparedness.